I mean, I think the three of them must have some contact with Maharaj and some realization. They can give a little talk, I guess.
Du départ de notre cher maître spirituel Srila Bhakti Charoswami, nous allons lire quelques pages de son livre L'Océan of Mercy. J'ouvre au hasard le chapitre 3, The Nectar of Devotion. This period in Calcutta was among the most difficult of my life. I could neither adjust to the world around me nor step into spiritual life, for which I yearned. I knew that to follow the spiritual path I needed a guru, someone who would take me by the hand and lead me onto the spiritual path, to a world of knowledge, emancipation, and joy. But I had not been able to find him, and now I am waiting. This incident with Anandamai had given me hope. If I had a guru, I felt he would reveal himself to me. One evening, I received a visit from my old friend Prabhu. I was happy to see him, but he looked different. So Prabhu, I remember, had long hair and dressed in Western clothes, but now his head was shaved and he wore a dhoti and kurta. I knew that in Germany he had become a devotee of Krishna in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, so his change of appearance did not shock me. But the glow from his face was striking. His whole demeanor radiated peace and tranquility. When I had first heard that Prabhu and his German girlfriend Cornelia had joined ISKCON, I had not taken it seriously, since he and I had not had a very pleasant experience when we had visited the ISKCON temple in Hamburg. As I have been coming out of the university's canteen one day, I had seen a group of young Westerners, the women dressed in sari and the men in dhoti and kurta, chanting and dancing. The sight had delighted me, but I had also made me long for home. I was from Calcutta, and these young men and women dressed in traditional Indian attire has filled me with pride for my culture. One of them was giving out magazine, and I walked up to him and booked one. And we talked. He told me about their mission and invited me to their Ram temple, just a subway stop from the university. I had visited and befriended some of them, and when I had shared my experience with Prabhu, he and I visited the temple together a few times. Once we were talking to one of the American devotees there, and because we were doing most of the talking, another devotee, who may not have liked that we were talking more than listening, started to criticize us, saying that Buddha was a swindler and Ramakrishna, a popular spiritual personage for Bengal, was a cheat. Prabhu had looked at me with surprise. Neither he nor I had mentioned Buddha or Ramakrishna, and I had silently indicated that we should leave, which we did, and we had never returned. Since then, whenever I had seen the devotee, I had avoided them. If I saw them on one side of the road, I would move to the other, and when I had returned to Calcutta, even though the ISKCON temple was not far from my house, and I had passed it many times, I had never entered. So when I heard that Prashun had joined, I did not think he was serious. Seeing how he looked when he came to see me, however, how refulgent he was, I had to revise my impression. Are you really serious about your involvement? I asked him. He answered with a gentle smile, yes. He told me how he had joined ISKCON in Berlin after reading a book, Sri Isopanishad, by his founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He had been initiated and received a spiritual name, Sarvabhavana Das Adhikari. Now he had returned to help the Krishna consciousness movement in India and was serving as vice president of the temple in New Delhi. He invited me to go to Delhi, but I remained non-committal. He did not try to persuade me or preach to me. We just spoke and enjoyed each other's association. I was impressed with the life Sarvabhavana was leading, abstaining from meat-eating, intoxication, sex, and gambling. But what impressed me most was his love and respect for his guru, who is called Srila Prabhupada. When Sarvabhavana spoke about him, his eye lit up and his face radiated joy. I took his attachment might be merely sentimental, but I was impressed nonetheless. The next morning, Sarvabhavana and I got together again, but when I offered to take him to lunch, he declined. He assured him that the food would be vegetarian, but he said he would go home and eat there. When I insisted, he told me that although the food would be vegetarian, the kitchen and utensils would have been used to cook other preparations. Again, I was impressed with his standards and conviction. I had many friends who were strict vegetarians, but Sarvabhavana's standards were on another level. That afternoon, I accompanied him to the nearby ISKCON temple, where he introduced me to a group of young American devotees. We had a wonderful discussion about various aspects of the spiritual life, and I was especially impressed by two of the devotees, Kundali Das and Anirdeshya Vapu Das. Both struck me as extremely intelligent, but whereas Kundali, short and plump, was full of humor, Anirdeshya, tall, slim, and saintly looking, was quite sober. I was attracted to his gentle and compassionate nature, and we immediately became friends. He told me about chanting the holy name in the form of a mantra, great mantra, and said that the benefits of eating Krishna Prasad, food that had been offered to Krishna, were far greater than those gained by performing thousands of sacrifices. I marveled at Anirdeshya's knowledge of Vedic scripture and was beginning to appreciate the wisdom he related. When he asked me if I would like to render some service, I immediately agreed, and he took me to a room next to the altar where he showed me how to cut fruits that will be offered to the deity. He told me about the benefit of rendering devotional service, the ultimate engagement for a living entity, with reward that could not be measured by material calculation. We cut up quite a bit of fruits, and after a few plates were offered to the Lord on the altar for some minutes and then returned. We mixed that fruit with the rest, broke it all out to the balcony, where devotees were sitting in a row, and served them. Anirdesha then made a plate for me, and another for himself. And we sat together and ate while he described how the Krishna consciousness movement could solve the world's problem by delivering the suffering, conditioned souls back home to serve the Lord. I was touched by Anirdesha's words, and by him engaging me in this way. The inner sanctum was a sacred place, and he had brought me, a total stranger, into this sacred place to render personal service to the Lord. I savour his every word. Over the next few days, I returned to the temple regularly. One evening, after attending the Sandhya Arti, the evening worship service, and a class of the Bhagavad Gita, I wanted to buy a copy of the book. They did not have one on hand, but when I said that I would appreciate any book they had, a devotee gave me a free copy of the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada's English summary study of the Sanskrit word by Srila Rupa Goswami, a 16th century saint, poet, and scholar.
You can continue reading, but it would be nice someone speaks there. Maybe you can speak also if you want, if you have something to say. If you have anything to say about your guru, you can speak also 5 minutes. If you want to say something about your spiritual master, your realization,
That is difficult.
Okay. Mataji, nothing.
She's not at ease to speak.
Okay. Maybe we can continue reading then. Okay. I immediately agreed, and he took me to, from there. The minute I got home, I opened the book and I began to read. I felt as if another reality was unfolding before my eyes. Right from the beginning of the book, Srila Prabhupada stated that God was a person, the Supreme Person, Krishna. I had maintained a deep attachment to Krishna since childhood, but I never had such a clear understanding that He was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Throughout my spiritual quest, I had been under the impression that liberation was the ultimate goal of life. But Srila Prabhupada very clearly explained that one who engages in devotional service to Krishna achieves liberation automatically. I had never read anything like it. This was what I had been looking for all my life. When I was younger, I had been influenced by Ayn Rand's philosophy, objectivism, portrayed in her novel Atlas Shrugged, which depicted what I had thought was an ideal society. But the nectar of devotion, I now understood, presented the ultimate perfection of an actual ideal society. Within its pages, I found a society based wholly on the highest ideal of life, selfless service to the Supreme Lord. I read until I fell asleep, and when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was pick up the book and start reading again. Srila Prabhupada explained that there are 5 kinds of liberation: becoming one with the Lord, living with the Lord on the same planet, having the same features as the Lord, enjoying the same opulence as the Lord, and living as the Lord's companion. But such liberation, Prabhupada pointed out, held no attraction for a devotee engaged in serving the Lord. Devotional service yielded a far greater joy. Everything was becoming clearer, and the more I read, the more absorbed I became. I lamented having wasted so many years searching without even knowing what I was searching for. Srila Prabhupada was answering all my questions perfectly. He explained the cause of our suffering and showed the way out. I could not put the book down. I read all day. That night I dreamed of Srila Prabhupada. He was sitting on a throne-like seat and a brilliant light emanated from his body. There was a crowd of people sitting at his feet. I did not ask him anything. I simply offered my obeisances and said, I surrender myself completely at lotus feet. Please accept me and guide me. When I woke, my heart brimmed with a wonderful feeling of fulfillment. I had found my spiritual master. As I continued reading, I learned more and more about Krishna and his greatness. He was the supreme creator, proprietor, and controller, and I realized that the goal of my life was to surrender to him. I felt in my heart that I would no longer have to worry about anything. Krishna would take care of me in all respects. I was almost overwhelmed with relief, free from anxiety of distress. Convinced that I found my Guru, I could not wait to return to the temple. The next day I went and asked Kundali Das if he knew where Srila Prabhupada was. After inquiring from other devotees, he told me that Prabhupada was in America and would not be back in India for a few months, probably not until October. He generally stayed in America during the summer and returned to India in the autumn. Looking forward to Srila Prabhupada's return, I decided to travel in the meantime to Bengal and visit the places where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna in the mood of Radharani, his eternal consort, had some 500 years earlier taken birth and engaged in transcendental activities. I felt fortunate that I had been born so close by. First, I went to Mayapur, the place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, just 130 kilometers from Calcutta. The evening I arrived, and Aarti was going on in the temple, and the large hall shook with the resounding beats of Mridanga drums. The room was full of devotees, nearly all Westerners, dancing, each in his or own style, but all in rhythm with kirtan. The scene was ecstatic, and everyone, even drenched in perspiration, appeared divine. After the Aarti, several of the devotees came over to speak with me. All very friendly, they arranged for my accommodation at the guest house and invited me to attend Bhagavad Gita class that was just about to begin. The class was in large conference room upstairs led by a devotee named Raghava Pandit Das. The atmosphere was inspiring. All the bright young devotees listening with rapt attention. I felt like I was getting a glimpse of the spiritual world. Raghav Pandit seemed quite learned and he spoke beautifully, explaining the importance of spiritual life, of understanding the futility of our materialistic endeavors and the rewards of becoming absorbed in spiritual activities. By surrendering to Krishna and engaging in his service, he said, we would experience the real joy for which we were always hankering. And Srila Prabhupada had created a perfect arrangement for all of us to achieve that ultimate perfection in the serene atmosphere of Mayapur and in the association of the Lord's devotees. I felt that Raghav Pandit was speaking directly to me. It was all so appropriate to my situation. And I was impressed that a Westerner had so much knowledge about the Vedas and was quoting Sanskrit verses from the Bhagavad Gita as if he knew the entire scripture by heart. After class, we all sat conversing. Not many people visited Mayapur in those days, and the devotees were curious about what had brought me there. They were very encouraging and requested that I stay and become a devotee, or at least give it a try. One of the brahmacharis, the single young male devotees, brought in a large plate of sweets and other delicacies and served all the devotees as they sat on the floor eating off leaf plates. The food was Mahaprasad, I was told, prasad that had come directly from the deities. I had never tasted anything so delicious. Even though the physical facilities in Mayapur were quite basic, I felt very much at home. I arose early the next morning well before sunrise and attended Mangalarti. Afterwards, I sat with the devotees and chanted japa for the first time. I had been familiar with the Hare Krishna Mahamantra since childhood. I had heard it sung and had joined Mahakirtans, and Aniruddesya Vapu had explained its spiritual significance to me in Calcutta, but I had never chanted quietly, counting my rounds on beads. At 7, we all participated in Shringara Arti, greeting the deities. Then we worshipped Srila Prabhupada in Guru Puja, and afterwards we gathered in the upstairs room for class. I was told that a sannyasi, a senior male renounced devotee, was going to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, the most important Vaishnava scripture which Srila Prabhupada had translated, on which he had written extensive commentary. In the room, a handsome young American, an elevated seat sang Jai Radha Madhava. I had never heard the prayer, but I had learned that the temple deities were named Sri Sri Radha Madhava. And now I saw that there was a link between Srimad Bhagavatam and the deities. It sounded amazing, sublime. The young sannyasi, like the devotee giving class the previous evening, was clearly knowledgeable, and he recited Sanskrit slokas, verses fluently and with authority. It was the first time I had experienced Westerners having such command of the Vedic scriptures. I was both awestruck and painfully aware of my own inadequacy in the subject, and I was also beginning to comprehend Srila Prabhupada's profound influence on his disciples. After the class, the sannyasi greeted me with a smile and introduced himself as Satadanya Swami. He had already heard about me, he said, and he expressed his pleasure in meeting me and joined the others in requesting that I remain with the devotees and become one myself. All the warm invitations, along with the wonderful spiritual atmosphere, attracted me greatly. Since I had already made up my mind to surrender to Srila Prabhupada, I thought, why not commit myself and stay? It was not difficult. I just went to a barber and had my head shaved, purchased a dhoti and kurta set, took a bath in the Ganga, threw away my old clothes and put on the new ones. When I returned to the temple, everyone was surprised and delighted at my transformation. The first to see me was Pandu Dasa, a talented painter from America, whom I had befriended on the previous evening. He exclaimed, You shaved up and became a devotee. But then he added, No, you have always been a devotee. The Mayapur temple and community were managed by two directors, Jayapataka Swami and Bhavananda Goswami, both from America. Jayapataka Swami was quite young, Bhavananda somewhat older. I was introduced to them in an office where they sat side by side on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by devotees. After a brief initial exchange, they gave me a form to fill out asking my name, address, other details. One point on the form especially impressed me, that I should never act in such a way that would bring dishonor or disgrace to Srila Prabhupada. That became deeply ingrained in my heart. Next, I was introduced to a young Italian brahmachari named I recently read his letter. I can see he was like good friends with Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, who served as the temple commander. I can't imagine Madhu Sevita Prabhu being the temple commander.
And no one is sleeping in the ashram.
like a military commander, he appeared grave and stern, which I thought was quite befitting. He was responsible for assigning services to devotees, and the first service he gave me was to help cook khichdi, a mix of grains, dal and vegetables, and was distributed every afternoon to local villages as part of a food distribution program. When I went to the kitchen and reported to the elderly Bengali devotee in charge of cooking, he examined me from head to toe. I could tell he was not impressed. He took me out back, pointed to a pile of firewood, directed me to bring the wood to the kitchen, and left. He had not told me how much to bring, so I just kept carrying one armful of wood after another, and by the time he returned, half the kitchen was filled. He gave me a disapproving, disgusted look and told me to take most of the wood back to the pile. Then he led me to the storeroom and asked me to bring bags of rice and dal to the kitchen, and again disappeared. The bags must have weighed 100 kilos each. Yeah, in India you don't get 10 kilo bags. We were only getting earlier 100 kilo bags. People were carrying them. The bags must have weighed 100 kilos each. There was no way I could even pick them up, let alone carry them to the kitchen. So I got hold of a bag and started to drag it across the floor. But along the way it became stuck between the staircase and a pillar. I pulled as hard as I could to dislodge it, but it would not budge. And when I gave it one last heave, the bag broke and dal scattered all over the floor. Poor Maharaj. Just then, of course, the managing devotee returned. When he saw the mess I had made, he became so exasperated that he did not say a thing. He just gave me that look again, letting me know without words that he thought I was the most useless person he had ever met. Imagine that. My fumbling attempt at service, I felt, had caused only disappointment to the devotees. That was the beginning of my spiritual life in Mayapur. The next day, I was assigned to go out into a field with a few other devotees and cut the grass. Finally, they're cutting grass in Mayapur also. Finally, I thought a service I could execute without trouble. But Bhavananda Maharaj, when Bhavananda Maharaj heard that I had been assigned to do, he got upset and chastised Madhusevita for engaging me in such a menial task. Madhusevita came to me and apologized. He told me that there was a practice that when someone joined the temple, he was given various tough jobs to test his sincerity. I said that I actually liked the idea. I was starting my new life and I was prepared to accept any service I was given. It was one of my first lessons in Krishna consciousness, that our life is meant for serving and pleasing Krishna. Our understanding lasted only so long, however, and one afternoon when Madhusevita found me reading in the library, he ordered me to go out and do something. I knew that everyone was allowed to take some rest in the afternoon. So I told him that I was reading and would prefer to continue to do so. If he could not find anyone for the work, I would do it later. Perhaps no one had ever responded to Madhusevita in such a way. Still the same. Especially a newcomer. He flared up, calling me the most arrogant person ever. I did not argue but walked right up to Bhavananda Maharaj's room and told him about how I'd been treated. Maharaj was also strong, huh? Bhavananda immediately went down and again chastised Madhusevita, who became embarrassed and said that Satadanya Swami had told him to keep me constantly engaged so that I wouldn't have any time to slip into Maya, the illusory aspect of the Lord's energy that takes one away from him. So then Bhavananda called Satadanya and blasted him too, asking whether he thought he was running a Nazi concentration camp. This is good to know, huh? Like Bhavananda Prabhu was caring to devotees. Sometimes, it's like when there is some little mistakes they do, overcovers all the good they do, it's so unfortunate, From then on, things went more smoothly. The devotees all seemed favorably disposed toward me. I was getting closer with all of them, and Madhu Sevita and I were becoming good friends. He was a sincere and serious devotee with an upright and straightforward manner, and he did not waste any time. His commitment to Srila Prabhupada was obvious, and he was completely focused on his service. Initially, Bhavananda Goswami seemed quite exalted and unapproachable, but in time I became close with him as well. He was an impressive, vibrant personality, and with his powerful build and booming voice, he was a natural leader who inspired spontaneous admiration and respect. He was older than most of the other devotees, and whereas most had rather bohemian and carefree backgrounds, he had been a well-established and prominent figure in New York fashion and film. Just a brief encounter with Srila Prabhupada had led him to surrender and changed his life. He is an architect also. Huh? Is he Bhavananda Prabhu? Bhavananda?
No, I think.
Designer.
Designer.
Yeah.
Designer. Yeah.
I still did not have a steady service, so devotees from different departments would invite me to serve with them. Satvika Das, a young Italian who took care of the cows in the Goshala, the cow barn, invited me to join him. I loved the idea, but I also knew that caring for the cows was one of the most coveted services. So I asked Bhavananda Maharaj, but he said that I was not really meant for that kind of service. I was disappointed and I accepted his decision. Then Hiranyagarbha Das, the head of the Gurukul, the children's school, and his assistant Nadia Das invited me to come teach with them again. With them. Again, I went to Bhavananda Maharaj and requested the posting, but again he said that the service was not right for me. And again I was disappointed. Teaching, I thought, was the best service for me, but he considered me unqualified for it. My pride was wounded and I protested. Do you think I am good for nothing? Any service that I am proposing, you think I am unfit for it? It's not a matter of your qualification, Maharaj shot back. When you see that the students are a bunch of village kids who pass urine in their beds and that the classroom stinks, I am afraid your idealistic dream will be shattered. I had a roommate, Tirthapada Das, an extremely serious young American devotee. He never wasted a minute. If he had any free time, he would read Srila Prabhupada books. He took prasad only after he had finished chanting his prescribed 16 rounds of the Maha Mantra, which took almost 2 hours. I was glad to be rooming with such a committed devotee. My biggest challenge was getting up early every morning. At home, I rarely got up before 8, but in Mayapur, everyone was expected to rise before 4 and attend Mangal Arati at 4:30. Tirthapad got up every day by 3:30 and would wake me up before going to bathe. When he returned to the room, he would often find me still lying in bed and have to urge me to get up. I would beg him to let me sleep just a little longer, but he would grab the end of my mattress and lift it up with me still on it. And I would have to jump out to avoid falling on the floor, both of us laughing all the while. Tirthapad and his brother had joined ISKCON together, but his brother had recently left the movement and he was sad about that. He was very affectionate with me as he were trying to recover his lost brother by fixing me in Krishna consciousness. It's 8 o'clock, maybe we could stop here. Yeah. Very nice book, huh? It's like quite inspiring. Yeah, Prabhu can add something, Prabhu can say something. about your personal relations with Maharaj and realizations. You must have a lot when you took over. Yeah, yeah.
Very good. I was
Ganga.
to see Maya.
Yeah.
I was in Paris at the time, and brought Yogesh Chandra Prabhu here. It was very nice Sankhan leader, and they organized a second compartment with Vedalapi, Madhavadapuri, Madhavadapuri Bhatta Maharaj disciple,
Mm-hmm.
and Christophe, also the Bhakti really tough
Mm.
to have, so gentleman.
Mm.
Yeah, in his dealings, very gentleman, very polite, very respectful. Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Compared to Prabhupada, definitely something we can, commemorate a special day, his appearance, his disappearance in New Mayapur can be.
Finished the paying, and then Maharaj invites everybody to come here.
Mm-hmm.
A huge festival just to finish everything, close the chapter. It was so nice.
Maharaj was also young. We just calculated his age. He was like 42 or something only. Yeah? He was, imagine that. It shows that they are Nitya Siddhas. They are not, conditioned souls. Even though they're young, what they do is unique.
Yes.
Imagine we're struggling to just maintain New Mayapur, but Maharaj is like saved New Mayapur when he was only 40 something.
Yes.
Incredible.
He was there when Krishna Balaram was installed and New Mayapur was bought.
No. No, he just came after Bhagavan Prabhu left. 86 he left, 87 Maharaj came.
Yeah. I came 88.
Oh.
Middle of 88. Maharaj came 87. Yeah.
It was the taking over team to maintain the place.
Yeah.
And then I had no plan to come to Mayapur.
Mm-hmm.
My plan was to stay in Paris,
Yeah.
And then, because go the month rent the house there in Los Lecon, and go the left I came.
Mm-hmm.
And then Maharaj was leaving France.
That time Indradumna Maharaj was leaving.
He said Mayapur.
Yeah.
And then he said, please give attention to Mayapur also. And then I was shipped in Paris to Mayapur. After that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Two
incredible.
big projects, huh?
Yeah.
Up till now.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. Yeah.
We were thinking that Maharaj may not never come back to New Mayapur, but we were surprised that Maharaj asked his disciples to organize a retreat last year here,
Yes.
New Mayapur.
Yes.
It was again, my God, such a trauma, like so much turbulence because there was no water in our well.
Oh.
Like we, imagine 100 of them coming, 108 of them came, his disciples. And we were running out of, we almost were dry in the well.
Wow.
1 month before we started to dig, connect.
Oh my.
The day they arrived, the water connection was done.
To the city water.
City water, yeah.
Oh my.
To the city water.
Yeah.
Lot of money, we didn't even struggling for that. There was like 5,000 or something, and we connected, but the water had no pressure.
Oh.
The guest house, my God, first floor gets, only ground floor gets water, no first floor, no second floor.
Wow.
They were all like so upset with us, the devotees were like really. But Maharaj was cool, huh? We went and apologized, begged forgiveness. He was like, it's okay, Maharaj, like you're trying your best, and, don't worry about it so much, You could see the devotees were like, kitchen downstairs was not like this now. What it is now is like actually upgraded kitchen, The devotees were upset with the kitchen, and my God, we had few groups from the manor and the Soho temple, but they were like very simple, but